I was sitting there thinking to myself, how many meetings like this have I been in my lifetime? And why is it that I would come from Milwaukee to Los Angeles to be here tonight? And why was I here last night? They had a big thing at Fleming's last night with Jalen Rose and Elgin Baylor. I know some of y'all, but Elgin Baylor, and they had all these NBA wives and ex-wives and whatever. And so what I want you all to understand, the reason why I do these things is because I'm sort of driven by this like fundamental belief that our children are our most precious gift from God, and that it is our responsibility, with God's guidance, to love them, to nurture them, to care for them, and to make sure that every single one of them is educated. And so Langston Hughes asked the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And in my view of the world, in America, it is virtually impossible for our children to bring their dreams to reality without an education. And every one of us who's sitting in this room tonight, we know that far too many of our children are not only having their dreams deferred, they're being destroyed. And they're being destroyed by educational systems that are undereducating them, miseducating them, and pushing them out by the thousands every single day. And what makes it so tragic is for all of the meetings and all of the papers and all of the debates, I do not believe that there's a sense of urgency in this country to do something about it. I think there's a sense of discussing doing something about it sometime. But there is not. It's a lie to keep saying that our children are so important to us. How can that be? If they're so important to us, how do we allow this to happen to them day after day after day? And you know, I had the opportunity to be the superintendent of the Milwaukee Public Schools for 4 years, a very improbable set of circumstances that I became the superintendent. They had to change the state law because I'd never been a teacher or a principal. And so they got this law called the Fuller Law. So it's a long story. But anyway, so people, when I was superintendent, people used to say, oh, what is it you want for your kids? What is it? What do you really want? And so I said, you know what? It's sort of simple. I want 4 things. If a kid graduates from the Milwaukee Public Schools and wants to go to college, I would like for them to be able to go to college and not spend their first year in remedial education. Could they go in the English 200 instead of 10XX? And for those kids, secondly, who didn't want to go to college, I wanted them to have the capacity to get a job that would potentially, that was back when there were jobs in America, to get a job that would pay like a living wage for themselves and their family. But I felt in my heart that whichever one of those 2 paths they went on, they all needed to have the same rigorous education. That it wasn't about finding the one that's good with their hands. You know what they told Malcolm? You know, y'all good with your hands. It wasn't that. Because what I was thinking was, you know what? Even if you decide to become an electrician, which is a great thing, and any of y'all who done paid any of them to come do anything in your house lately know it's a great thing. But the reality of it is, to be an electrician, whatever you want to be in today's world, you need a rigorous education. But you know what the other part of it was? I knew, and y'all know, that you get out of high school, I ain't going to college. I don't want to go to college. 3 or 4 years down the road, I want to go to college. And then all of a sudden you want to go, but you haven't taken a single course that will allow you to go. So my thing was, I don't care which one of those two paths they take, I want them to have the same rigorous education. The third thing is, I would like some of my kids to have an entrepreneurial spirit, that they would come out not saying, where can I find a job? But they would come out saying, I can create a job. And I used to tell all of my kids, like, hey, I want y'all to do well and do good. You know, this whole idea, I want y'all to be rich. That's what I used to tell them. And I was serious. And I wanted all of them to be working. You know, like the closer you get to Social Security, the more important it becomes that everybody's working. But I wanted some of my kids to come out saying, hey, you know what? I can create jobs. I can do this. But the fourth path was, no matter what you do in the other three, I wanted them to be able to do what Paulo Freire called the practice of freedom. Because in his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, in the foreword of that book, Richard Shaw talks about, like, what is the purpose of education? The purpose of education is not to develop our young people to conform to the existing order. The purpose of education is to give them the skills and the capacity that they need to engage in the practice of freedom, the transformation of their world. Those were the four things I wanted. And I didn't understand why people got mad, why they thought that was a problem. What's wrong with what I just said? Why couldn't we want that for every single child? Because it's clear. The young people we fail to educate will not be able to get jobs. They will continue to head to prison instead of to college. It's not a debate out here about what's going on, because, like, you either going to educate the kids in the front end, or there is another public institution waiting for them on the back end. Study after study talks about the correlation between who's in prison and their educational level, their educational attainment level. So, and when you come to a place like LA, and it's less true in Milwaukee because, you know, it's like Milwaukee. It's not like LA or anything, you know, but even in Milwaukee, people are operating under misguided notion that we can build enough gated communities and hire enough security guards to keep them away from us. And all of these tragedies, when these kids don't learn, it's not just the personal tragedy for them and for their families. It's not even just the havoc that these kids, these young people will bring to our communities. What all of us in this room got to understand, we're actually talking about the sustenance of our democracy. Because Kenneth Clark said many years ago, you cannot have a democracy without an educated populace. Because it is education that makes it possible for people to make the types of decisions that they need to make in a democracy rather than through tyranny or violence. It is the substance rather than the verbalization of democracy that is important. And that depends on our ability to deepen the insights of our people. Because only educated people can ultimately make the types of choices which assert their freedoms and reinforce their sense of social responsibility. Kenneth Clark, you know, I had the great fortune to meet Kenneth Clark. I don't know how many of you all know, you know, with the Dows and footnote 11 of the Brown decision, for all you young people, this is, you know, Kenneth Clark. And he was in my office, and by then he was in his 80s. And he looked out the window, and I said, you know, Dr. Clark, like, you know, what's happening? And he was saying, I wonder, did any of my work make a difference? And I'm here to tell him, your work made a difference. And when you say things like this, it's meaningful, not when you said it, not only when you said it, but it's meaningful today. And all of you all who are educators and teachers, you know there are no magical solutions out there which are going to make this all happen. The reality of it is excruciatingly difficult to create a great school. The only thing harder than creating a great school is sustaining one. But if you're going to create a great school, it's clear there's certain things that's got to happen. The school has to be mission-driven, not rule-bound. If you go into a school, the first thing people start telling you about is all the rules. I almost guarantee you that that's not going to be a successful school. You need a school that's operated by adults who have a coherent educational philosophy and pedagogy. You need a place that holds not only the students accountable for results, but the adults as well. You need a place that's relentless in their focus on student learning, while at the same time providing places that enhance adult learning as well. I mean, it's really interesting how people think teachers get better. They don't, you know, this thing that, I don't know what they call it now, but they used to call it in-service. I used to call it hoax. Because what would happen is they'd have like a couple in-service days every year. You're really going to learn something with a couple in-service days every year. Or you send someone to Utah, and they learn something really cool, and the only reason you knew they were gone is because somebody had to cover their class. And then when they get back, they don't have no time to tell you what they learned. And because when they get back, there's nobody in the classroom to help them when it's, you know, when the kid, you know, everything's cool till the kids come. You know, all kinds of theory and all that, it's all good. And then those kids show up, you know what I mean? So something gonna go wrong. But because there's nobody there to tell you, hey, you know, this is really going wrong, you go back to doing what? What you know, even though what you know don't work. I mean, think about how we treat the adults who are supposed to be the people we care so much about because they're taking care of our children. And we got to start thinking about places for learning that are not even places at all. I mean, I did visit Judy Burton's school today. I mean, I went out to the school for technology and math and science because I'm going to try to open up a blended learning school, middle school in Milwaukee in 13-14. Now, I don't think blended learning is like a panacea, but I do know that there are people who are getting college degrees today who never set foot on a college campus. And I do see how kids respond to computers, to iPads, to all kinds of different tools. And I do see that we need to think deeply about how to get out of this industrial age mentality that we have. You know, like I got a little grandson, he's 2. And I made the mistake of downloading one of those monkey games on my iPod Touch. I'm an Apple freak. So this dude is 2. And he's like, you know, he gets the thing. First thing he starts talking about, monkey. So I know what that means, right? So, but he's able now to go into the iPod Touch, open it up, play that game. And then I got a granddaughter that's 5, Zoe. We got to give Zoe an iPad because, I mean, she knows how to do all of this. I don't know how many of y'all ever go to Apple Store, but you go to Apple Store, there's this round table, and they got bean bags, and in front of each bean bag, there's like a computer, right? And almost every Apple Store I've gone into, anywhere in the United States, has got this. Every time you go in there, there's some little kids sitting in front of that computer, manipulating the mouse. If you think that these little kids are going to sit in some room with these rows of chairs all evenly laid out and listen to somebody pontificate for 6 hours, you don't understand. Because not only are they learning to facilitate and get information differently, it's having an impact on their brains. And so we gotta think so differently about what we have to do for these kids. But at the end of the day, technology improves, it comes and it goes, but you know what's still required is a great teacher. A great teacher. And a great teacher begins before anything else, it begins with relationships with kids. You know what I mean? Like when I do in-service for teachers, I try to tell people, look, people always ask me, well, you know, Howard, do you think you need a black teacher, a Latino teacher? I said, you know what you really need is a good teacher. Now, I'd like to see some good Latino teachers, some good black teachers, but at the end of the day, give me a great teacher. And I talk to people about the most important thing about teaching, it seems to me, is being who you are. Is there anything worse than some dude who ain't cool trying to be cool? Because the kids know you ain't cool, you trying to be cool, they know you ain't cool, they know you fronting, they know, and so right away you doomed. Relationships, content knowledge, relationships, the capacity to feel passion about what you do. And so these are things that we all have to think about. But the thing I want to leave with you tonight, though, is although we're going to talk about how to change teaching in schools and all of that, I want to make it very clear that we must also focus on the reality of the impact on our children's lives of the existence of differential power and access to resources in this country based on race and class. And I want to be clear, because, you know, I know young people trying to tell me that we live in post-racial America. And so I know y'all got a definition of it, because y'all got definitions for everything. So I'm waiting for somebody to explain to me what post-racial America is. And I tweeted about this yesterday because I was in the Walgreens down there on 8th Street somewhere, and there was a black dude who was either, I don't know if he was homeless, but he obviously has gone through difficult times. And he was walking through, and he was going from aisle to aisle, and he kept saying, "Black man leaving, called the security guards to check the shelves." He kept saying it over and over again, because he didn't get the memo that we in post-racial America. You know what I'm saying? And it was sad, but powerful. Because like I was feeling what that brother was saying. I mean, he just kept going down each aisle and he kept saying the same thing over and over again. Because the reality of it is, race still matters in America. And class matters in America. And in fact, the only people who tell you that money don't matter in America got money. Don't nobody who's poor roll around in America talking about how cool it is not to have any money in America. You all have kids who ought to get a medal just for showing up at school, given what it is they go through every single day. These kids are dealing with stuff that I frankly could never. I don't know that I could have survived it. And so my point is, children who are hungry cannot learn. Children who are abused and neglected can't come and be ready to concentrate in school. Children need to see their families, somebody in their family working, in their community working, to understand the connection between education and work. Children have to see a society where their race will not be an impediment to their advancement and respect. Children have to interact with adults who have not already reached conclusions about their capabilities because of the color of their skin or the clothes that they wear. And I see these young brothers, like in our school, I chaired the board of a charter school, high school. And we don't let our young dudes like wear their pants down below their behinds. I mean, it's cool, Lil Wayne can do it, but I'm trying to tell these dudes, first of all, y'all ain't Lil Wayne. And this ain't no stage, y'all in school. But the reality of it is, I have a certain amount of respect for these young brothers, because when I see them with their pants hanging down like that, I know that that's somebody who understands physics. Because, because there's no other explanation for how they can do this. Because they can not only walk, some of these young dudes can run. You know, and like, you know, before Chris Rock, there was Richard Pryor. And so Richard Pryor used to talk about people low running. These dudes can low run with their pants hanging down. They got my respect, but they got to still pull up their pants when they come in our school. So, but the point is here, I'm walking a very delicate line, because although race and class clearly have an impact on kids' lives, there's a difference between understanding this and using that as an excuse not to educate them. Because there's this big debate going on out here now about the relationship between poverty and learning. And there are people out here who've taken the position, essentially, that until we eliminate poverty, we're not going to be able to teach these kids. And that's a lie. That's a lie. But it is equally stupid for those of us who have no excuses schools to say it makes no difference if the kids slept in a car last night. That's an idiotic statement. Anybody who says that, first of all, anybody who's listening to you, they're going to immediately tune out because they know that's stupid. It clearly makes a difference if you slept in a car last night. The question is, you know that, what are you going to do in terms of how you run your school to deal with that reality? To say, oh, you can't make no excuses because you slept in a car, that's a stupid thing to say. I mean, I'm sorry if y'all said that, and I didn't, but my point is, no, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, because yes, we got to have no excuses, but no excuses don't mean you don't recognize real things that impact children's lives. But you got to tell them, you know what? I don't know what we got to do. I don't know if we got to have a cot for you. I don't know what it is we got to do. But you know what? Nobody's going to care when you get out into the world. So we got to figure out a way, in spite of what it is that's happening to you, that we got to deal. And because I tell all of my kids, like, I gave a graduation speech. I think people got mad at me and stuff. But I didn't care. But I did sort of care. But I was trying to make a point, because I was telling one of the young ladies in particular, I said, first of all, when you get out in the world, cute's only going to take you so far for a couple of reasons. First of all, you ain't as cute as you think you are. And secondly, I can guarantee you, it ain't going to last forever. I know it's hard to believe, it ain't going to last forever. And when you get an attitude, ain't nobody really trying to figure out, like, why you all puffed up, in the world. Because, when they come to school puffed up, what's wrong, baby, what's wrong? And you got to do that because you got to hug them, you got to love them. But you got to tell them when you get out in the world, hey, when you come with an attitude, you know what people's comment going to be? Next. Next in line. That's the world in which you live. So it's both understanding these issues, it's confronting these issues, it's not using excuses, but it's understanding the impact that this has on kids' lives. And so I'm trying to make a point here that we can never get to the point that we let ourselves be fooled into the notion that schools can by themselves overcome all of the horrific conditions that face our kids before they ever get to us. So I want to leave you all with two quotes. One is by Ron Edmonds. And Ron Edmonds was the father of effective schools. And let me say something, too, while I'm thinking about this. When I was superintendent, I walked into the classroom of a teacher who had been teaching for 49 years. No superintendent in 49 years had ever been in her classroom. And when I took the job as superintendent, I decided I was not going to be held hostage at the central office. And so it took me 4 years, but I visited every single school in the district. And I went into classrooms. You know how when you go into a classroom where learning is taking place, it's almost like you can feel it. It's like you can reach out and touch it. And what's interesting about it is it's all different kind of classrooms. Because a lot of times when visitors come and they go to a ghetto school, if they go there and the kids are like really, they go in the classroom and kids quiet and orderly, they're like, oh, this is a great school. They was orderly. So they may been in a classroom where there's a truce. You know, the kids and the teacher got a truce. You don't do nothing, I ain't gonna do nothing. We got a truce up in here. And they come out, hey, did nobody hit me? This is a great school. You know, but I used to go into these schools, and I'm not lying. Teachers used to pass me notes. Make sure you go to room 202. You know, because you can go to these classrooms where all this learning is taking place, and then you walk right next door to death. And everybody in the building know where the death rooms are. And so they was trying to steer me to the death rooms. But anyway, let me get back to this. So I walked into this. So what do I got to do with the lady? So I walked into her classroom, 49 years. The reason why I'm raising it is because when you see these clips, it's all young teachers. And people make the mistake of equating young with good. Young with, these are the teachers who got, first of all, there's some really terrible young teachers. Let's be really clear. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, and so there are some veteran teachers out there like her. I walked in her classroom, and it was a special ed class. This lady still had it with her kids. They loved her, and she loved those kids, and she could reach those kids, because that's what it's about, loving those kids, reaching those kids. And when I say love, I want to be real clear, because Marianne Williamson wrote this book called Return to Love. And in this book, she talked about the fable of the frog and the princess, and how the princess kissed the frog and turned the frog into a prince. And she was saying that what this parable is really about, or fable is really about, is the miraculous power of love to create the conditions for transformation. And that if you don't love people, you can't understand them. And if you can't understand them, you can't reach them. And if you can't reach them, how in the world are you going to be able to teach them? And I told that story, and a lady came up to me and said, are you trying to tell me that I got to love these kids like I do my husband and other people like they're significant others? And she was all mad at me that I was telling her that she had to love these kids. And I said, ma'am, first of all, I don't know you. I don't know how you love your husband. But I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about agape. I'm talking about unredeeming love, expecting nothing in return. So I want you to just remember what Ron said. He said, we can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to know to accomplish the task. Whether or not we do it must finally depend upon how we feel about the fact that we have not done it so far. And William Daggett said, we must love our children's hopes, their dreams, their prayers, their aspirations more than we love the institutional heritage of the school system. Howard Fuller said, we must love our children's hopes and dreams and aspirations and prayers more than we love the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and all these other organizations that we hold on to, no matter what their impact on our children's present and their future. Thank you very much.